So you asked about student loan forgiveness and you asked about the latest on the stimulus. Well, I've got a couple of developing stories on both fronts this afternoon, as the stimulus negotiations in the Senate this afternoon look like they are going to be pushed into the weekend for a final vote. So we thought maybe this would be a quicker process. It's not, thanks to one person, Mitch McConnell, who has vowed, of course, to stand up and fight this thing. He does not want stimulus to pass. He does not want you to receive $1,400 stimulus check. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has thrown a number of amendments into the mix in order to slow this process down. Now, he knows this is going to pass. In fact, he admitted as much last night in his interview with Martha McCallum on Fox. He said it'll pass. Democrats will fall in line. Republicans will fall in line. And this is going to pass. So what's he doing? The only reason that he's getting in the way of this with amendments is to slow it down. And it's screwing you. That's it. Big donors get on the phone with him, show of force, stand up against this package. No money for poor and middle class Americans. That's what you have to do. So that's exactly what Mitch McConnell is doing. So the stimulus voting will be pushed probably into the weekend as they continue floor debates. It's going to be a long few days, but we'll keep our eye on that. Another notable item, though, on the stimulus front is what the Federal Reserve is doing. This is an interesting take on what's happening right now with the Federal Reserve, and all eyes on what Jerome Powell is going to be saying over the next few days. Now, he's going to be at this virtual Wall Street Journal event today, and we're going to see what kind of market developments he's seeing, because we just got some news this morning that the unemployment rate really is continuing. The jobless claims are continuing to fire on all cylinders. Like, we are still sitting at the worst of the recession in 2008, 2009. Right now, 740,000 Americans filing for unemployment claims again. Like, this is not good. We are still in the throes of a major slowdown in the economy. Now, we can hope maybe that the spring will pick up and housing numbers will pick up. But remember, with so many people out of work who've lost their jobs and permanent job unemployment and people being pulled off of those unemployment rolls altogether, this is the new normal in the economy. The Federal Reserve even said as much when they revised their numbers, their unemployment numbers, to reflect all of those people who've been left out of the data before. It's worse than we thought it was. So what is the Fed doing? Well, it looks like it may be, according to this report, the Fed could be firing up economic stimulus in disguise. And what does this mean? Well, because comments came Tuesday from Fed Governor Lael Brainerd suggested the Fed may be jumping on board the global monetary policy rethink and restarting a program used following the 2008 global financial crisis. Now, it was used back in the 60s and then once again in 2011 after the crap we had to go through in 2008, 2009. So here's what Axios is reporting in their market analysis. Economists say it's unlikely that the Fed would reignite its quantitative easing program at central banks, as central banks in Australia and Korea have announced the same thing in recent days. But it could start what's known as Operation Twist. Now, this is an interesting thing. Operation Twist, it would be called Operation Twist number 3, like World War III, Operation Twist number 3. And it would be the third time the Fed has used this tool. It would see that the Fed would be selling some of its short-dated U.S. Treasury bonds in favor of picking up those longer Treasury bonds. Now, don't let this wonkiness get in your head. All it means is it would be meant to flatten the overall yield curve, as it did in 1962 and 2011. And again, why this all matters, of course, is that in addition to all the technical benefits of the bond market, Operation Twist has historically, according to Axios, stimulated the economy by pulling down that benchmark 10-year Treasury yield. Now, why is that important? Because this could further stimulate the economy, and it might not be putting stimulus checks in your pocket, but what it would do is it would further lower mortgage rates, auto loans, credit card interest rates. Remember, that 10-year Treasury yield, everything is tied to that number. And so we could see a real upswing in the economy based on this move. So, here's why it's really important. They wouldn't have to add any more debt to their portfolio. They'd be selling off short-term bonds, picking up long-term bonds, and in effect, changing the interest rate structure in the United States. So you think interest rates are low right now on the mortgage front? Whoa. Just wait until you see what happens. If this happens, auto loans, car manufacturers, people who might have been sitting on the fence about buying a car. This might be, your car's breaking down. This might be the opportunity because interest rates would even go lower. In addition to which, if you've been sitting on massive credit card debt, and you've got those high interest credit cards, here's an opportunity for those those rates to go lower. By the way, you should also be, if you've got higher interest credit card debt, be looking at picking up one of those zero interest credit cards for 12 to 18 months, transferring that debt over to that 0% interest credit card. Remember, you're just trading one financial product for another. Don't be worried about that. If you can punt that interest rate to a zero interest credit card right now, that would be absolutely ideal. So under the surface of all this right now, we have a lot of bullish expectations on Wall Street for booming economic growth in 2021. We've been hearing that from a number of economists. But to me, at the heart of it all, of course, are these unemployed Americans. And it's all of those small businesses that have been hammered. Could this, with a housing market that's starting to slow, could this move by the Fed be sort of an end around new stimulus that could do kind of wonders for the economy? So keep your eye on this, especially on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, which last week had risen a little bit. And that's going to slow down the housing market. Remember, we saw what happened to the housing market about 2 years ago when the rate went from about 3.45% up to about 4.25%. The housing market into that holiday season went, zoom, it fell out. I mean, it was bad news. And then guess what happened? Once that rate dropped again, housing market took back off again. So that's what's happening to this interest rate right now. It's starting to tick up a little bit on the housing front. Not good news if you're a realtor or thinking about selling your home, etc. It was starting to tick up a little bit. And if the Fed does this, it could totally alter that. And we could see a booming spring in the housing market, auto industry, as well as credit card debt being, brought down your high interest rate. So that's good news on that front. I wanted to bring you that story. I also want to bring you what's unfolding with student loan debt. If you watched my show earlier today, I promised that I would be covering this today because it looks as if, once again, Joe Biden is sticking to his guns and caving once again to the more moderate wing of the party and not going to support a larger $50,000 student loan forgiveness program. So remember this question that he got, of course, a few weeks ago at that CNN town hall when he was asked about what he would do to go bigger than $10,000 student loan forgiveness. Would he, in fact, go bigger? Here was his response at that CNN town hall.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed, but how?
By the way, what do you mean by that? I mean, he's like, you think I'm kidding? You're 78 years old. You're the oldest man ever elected to the United States presidency. You've got student loan debt. You went to a public college 70 years ago. What are you talking about? Are you just trying to relate to this woman who literally and so many others are suffering right now? I just don't understand. Let's listen to that again. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around what he was saying there or what he meant. Like, was he trying to just like play along and be one of the people with that kind of commentary? So I don't know what he was trying to do there. Trying to be a man of the people? I don't know. Let's watch this again. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Loans are crushing my family, friends, and fellow Americans.
Me too.
The American dream is to succeed.
Think I'm kidding.
How can we fulfill that dream when debt is many people's only option for a degree? We need student loan forgiveness beyond the potential $10,000 your administration has proposed. We need at least a $50,000 minimum. What will you do to make that happen?
I will not make that happen. It depends on whether or not you go to a private university or public university. It depends on the idea that I say to a community, I'm going to forgive the debt, the billions of dollars of debt for people who have gone to Harvard and Yale and Penn and schools. My children, I went to a great school, I went to a state school. But is that going to be forgiven rather than use that money to provide for early education for young children who come from disadvantaged circumstances? But here's what I think. I think everyone, and I've been proposing this for 4 years, everyone should be able to go to community college for free. For free. That costs $9 billion, and we should pay for it. and the tax policies we have now, we should be able to pay for it. You spend almost that.
Yeah. But that has nothing to do with erasing the predatory, debilitating student loan debt that are saddling our young people. I mean, the fact that you can go to Norway, go to the Netherlands, go to universities in Europe and pay and walk away with $0 in student loan debt and become a lawyer? Give back to your society? You know, the thing is, you have to remember, it's about building the future of your country. When you have a workforce that's educated, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, whatever, that are contributing to society to build up your economy, but yet they're saddled with $100,000, $200,000 in student loan debt. Like my sister, who has, I think, $200,000 in student loan debt. To become an early childhood development master's degree to help children. So someone who's literally in the social work field, saddled with that much debt, by the way, you're never going to make that much money back in the social work field. So that's like a permanent albatross around the necks of people. But the mainstream media, make no mistake, is already jumping on board and carrying the water for this idea of just doing a $10,000 student loan forgiveness program, which is what Biden has been championing and what progressives have said, no, we need to go bigger. So here, I love this Newsweek headline just today. Joe Biden's plan to cancel $10,000 of student loan debt is more popular than eliminating $50,000, according to a new poll. So, I dove into this poll, by the way, because I wanted to see what their criteria was on this. According to a Monmouth University study. Okay, so a university did this study. Number one, a predatory university did this study. Okay, let's start there. And then the sample size was 800 people, adults they looked at. Adults, okay? People who probably don't even have any student loan debt anymore now that they're in their 40s and 50s, 60s, that are a part of this poll. Why don't you ask someone who's 25 as part of your poll? Thank you, Monmouth University. By the way, at the heart of all of this is the predatory lending practices, is the predatory university system, where you could, back in the 1970s, get a university degree and end up paying like $1,000 or so. That same degree, is now upwards of $50,000. Nothing's changed. In fact, the value of a degree has actually gone down. So the value of a college degree has gone down in the workplace, and yet the costs have more than quintupled. Make any sense? No. But you can go to other countries and you don't pay anything for free public college. And yet you're getting a better degree, better schooling, more focused, by the way. You're not wasting a year and a half on repeating classes that you took in high school, and then not have to deal with student loan debt once you get out into the world. So one of the members of Congress who's been pressing, one of the progressive members of Congress has been pressing pretty tough on this. And I think at the heart of Biden's argument is he doesn't think that he legally has the authority to do this. I got news for you. Why don't you ask Betsy DeVos? Betsy DeVos, the former education secretary, who was able to suspend and use the Education Act to stop all kinds of things during the pandemic. Why don't you call up the former Trump administration and get some advice on this? Here's Ayanna Pressley. Representative says, does President Joe Biden have the authority to cancel student debt with the stroke of a pen? Well, guess what? The answer is yes. Yes, he does. Here's the video that he's specifically referencing, the More Perfect Union video. Let's watch, because this details exactly what authority the president does have to wipe away student loan debt.
I'm going to talk about one simple question. Is it legal for President Biden to cancel student debt? The answer is yes. He can do it today, without any other action by Congress. Let me explain why. Imagine you lend me $20. It's your $20. You can ask me to pay it back in full, in half, or not at all. Student debt cancellation works the same way. When someone takes out a federal student loan, they're borrowing money from the government, and the Constitution gives Congress the authority to control property of the government, such as debts owed to it. When Congress gave the Secretary of Education the authority to make or back student loans, it also gave the Secretary the broad and unrestricted power to cancel or write down that debt. This power was established under the Higher Education Act in 1965. That law gives the Secretary of Education the authority to compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand, however acquired. The Secretary also has the authority not simply to compromise debt, but to modify a student loan to zero. Secretary Betsy DeVos actually used this authority to cancel out a limited amount of student debt.
Wow. A Trump, and once again, let's be out-lefted or out-progressed. I don't know if that's even a word. Progressived? I don't know. Outmaneuvered by the Trump administration. They wanted higher stimulus checks, $2,000. Managed to use the Higher Education Act to do that exact thing under Betsy DeVos. Can Joe do it?
Now, it's important to understand the purpose of the Higher Education Act. It was to make the benefits of higher education widely available, especially to those who otherwise couldn't afford it. Nobody else but the federal government was willing to lend to people with no credit history, no means, and only the chance at a bright future. But we decided to do it because education is so important to us as individuals and as a country.
Right. So let's just be clear. We're lending to people that have no means of really paying it back. Okay. They have no credit. So, and the universities are gouging with these ridiculous prices. So you're putting all of that into one big bag. That sounds like a perfect storm, right? So now we have $1.7 trillion of student loan debt in the United States among students. The federal government could step in and wipe it all away, give them a clean slate. But it only solves part of the problem, of course, because we then need to add on what President Biden has truly been championing, which is free public college. Now, I know the arguments. There are people that are on the one side that are angry about this idea. You know, what about the people that, hey, what about all the folks that struggled and paid off their loans or is paying them right now? What about them? It doesn't seem fair. I get it. But you know what? It's not about you. I paid off my student loans, but it took me years to do it. Can't we expect a better future for future generations? In the same way that the way that past generations did things that they don't want their younger generations to have to suffer from. Same thing applies here. So stop thinking about yourself. Yes, I paid off my student loans, but I want the future of America to not have to be saddled with this kind of debt. It would help and transform our economy and our country if we didn't have to have this albatross around your neck when you leave college. Here's another take on it. Millions of Americans deserve relief from predatory student lending and outrageous tuition. Why are you advocating to only bring relief to those few who have a remaining principal balance on their loans, including the many who partied their way into student debt? Why are you only advocating to bring relief to those few who have a remaining principal balance? So people just partied their way into student debt? How does that work? You get the loans approved before you even go to college. What does partying have to do with that? You're missing the point. But how would this transform your life to have the student loan debt removed? Now, right now, members of Congress are still pushing President Biden on this issue, but it looks like President Biden is going to be coming down on the side of $10,000 student loan forgiveness. And of course, if you see the mainstream media's push on this, Joe Biden's plan to cancel $10,000 of student loan debt is more popular than eliminating a $50,000 student loan debt. Right. Thanks, Newsweek. It's more popular among 800 people. Oh, by the way, how much more popular is it, according to your poll? 5%. 45% want the $50,000 in debt cancellation. 53%. By the way, then it's in the margin of error. And let's not forget, of course, that this poll was conducted by a university. The very kinds of universities that stand to continue to gain from gouging students with ridiculously overpriced college. So I need to spend a year and a half at college repeating what I did in high school in the United States. Ridiculous. We need a massive overhaul. Continue to push your members of Congress on this issue. Demand student loan forgiveness at the federal level, at least $50,000. It's what Chuck Schumer wants. It's what Elizabeth Warren wants. It's what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants, the progressive wing of the party. That's why Chuck Schumer is pushing for it, because he knows he could be run against by AOC during a primary. Continue to push your members of Congress on this issue. Drop me a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you support $10,000 student loan forgiveness or $50,000 student loan forgiveness? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on that little bell notification right down here, because we do our show live every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time, and I will see you bright and early first thing in the morning right here on Morning Invest. Much love to all of you.